Good evening and welcome to another edition of Cooking with Bismark. Tonight we'll be making spinach, cheese, and herb soufflé. This is a fun dish that I've mixed up from a couple of cookbooks, and so it should be rather surprising. I'm not sure whether cooking should be surprising, but we'll find out. For this recipe, you will need 1/4 teaspoon paprika, 1/4 teaspoon salt, and 1/4 teaspoon nutmeg, 1/8 teaspoon cayenne pepper, and 1/8 teaspoon black pepper, 1/4 teaspoon cream of tartar, a handful of chives and parsley, chopped, 20 ounces of spinach, 6 eggs, separated, 1/4 pound of Parmesan cheese, 1/2 pound of Gruyere, 20 grams of gluten-free flour, 325 milliliters of whole milk, and 60 grams of butter. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our spinach and we're going to wilt it down in this pot here. Now I'm just going to add a bit of water to this, and then we're going to put it over high heat and let it boil up for a bit. It doesn't need to boil up for long, we just need it to be a bit wilted. So what we're trying to do here is we're going to try to get moisture out of the spinach by first boiling it off, and then we're going to squeeze it through a sieve. Okay, spinach is starting to wilt, so we should be there real quick. Okay, there we go. Now I'm going to transfer this to a sieve and pour out the water. Hot! So just get the rest of the spinach into the sieve. So you take a slightly larger bowl, the sieve, and a slightly smaller bowl, and you just squeeze the spinach, and you squeeze out the water. As you can see, we've got lots of liquid in the larger bowl, so we'll empty it out right now. Now, if you'd like, you can save the spinach water for some purpose or other. Apparently, it acts as a natural food dye, and you repeat the process, squeezing out as much water as possible. Now this is about as good as I'm going to get it, because I'm a bit tired of squeezing out moisture. So now what we're going to do is we're going to chop this up, along with the rest of our herbs. Now for the next step, we're going to whisk up those egg whites. So we're going to take the stand mixer and the egg whites. Before we start mixing, we're going to add in the cream of tartar. Adding cream of tartar helps the egg whites reach stiff peaks. As you can see, these peaks are stiff but not dry. We're going to set this off to the side while we prepare the bechamel sauce. We're going to add our butter. After we heat this up, we're going to add the milk, spices, and some of the cheese. We want a medium-high temperature here, probably closer to a medium because you don't want to burn the butter and milk. To the butter, we're going to add the flour, salt, and spices, and then we're going to add the milk and then some of the cheese. However, the butter needs to be melted first. Okay, we're going to add the spices and the flour. I'm only using 20 grams of flour, as I found that the gluten-free flours tend to thicken at smaller quantities compared to normal flour. If you're using normal flour, you should use about 1/4 cup or somewhere around 60 grams. So now that the sauce is starting to thicken, we're going to slowly add in the milk. As you can see, the sauce is starting to thicken up nicely. We've reached a time where I think we want to start adding the cheese. We're going to add all of the Gruyere and half of the Parmesan. Oh. And I'm going to reduce the temperature as it's starting to bubble. It smells wonderful. And half of the Parmesan. Now that it's melting nicely, I'm going to take it off the heat because this pan keeps heat in pretty well. We're going to let this cool for 10 minutes. Meanwhile, we're going to prep our souffle dish. I'm also going to preheat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. What I'm going to do to prep the souffle dish is take some additional butter, wipe it around the interior of the dish, and then apply the Parmesan that we have left over to coat the inside. You want to make sure to get a nice layer of butter on to ensure that the souffle doesn't stick to the dish. Now that I've got the dish coated in butter, I'm going to add the Parmesan. We'll do a nice little layer on the bottom, because then on top of that layer of Parmesan, we're going to add some of the spinach and herb mixture. Getting it around the sides I found to be a bit tricky. I found that if you just kind of push it up against the sides, some of it at least sticks, and then you'll just want to spread out the rest onto the bottom of the pan. You don't need to use all of the leftover Parmesan because we can pour the remaining Parmesan onto the top if it looks like there's too much on the inside. So as you can see, I didn't get too much Parmesan onto the sides. However, there is a nice coating on the bottom. And to that coating, I'm going to add some of our herb and spinach mixture. Not all of it though, just some. About that much, I think. We'll just spread that out onto the bottom. So now the bottom is covered with herbs and cheese. Looks great already. So it's been about 10 minutes, so we'll add the egg yolks to the bechamel sauce. Just pour them in like that. Get as much of them as possible. And to this mixture, we're also going to add the remaining spinach and herbs. I was a bit of an idiot and left the whisk in. We're actually going to want to use the spatula for this, or a spoon. We'll mix it all nice and get it ready for adding in the egg whites. We want to make sure that all the egg yolks are nicely incorporated. See? That is very hot. Now we're going to add the egg whites by folding them in. We're first going to start by folding in about 1/3 of them. Now we're going to add the remaining egg whites and fold them in until we no longer see any white streaks. However, we don't want to over mix them as we want the souffle to be light and airy. As you can see, we've eradicated the white streaks and it's still light and fluffy. We're going to pour this into our souffle pan. Let's just make this nice and smooth on the top before we add the remaining cheese. And we'll put this into the oven for 20 to 30 minutes, or until the internal temperature reaches 170 degrees. We'll check it in about 25. It's been about 40 minutes, and I'm going to check to see if we're finally at 170 degrees Fahrenheit. It's looking pretty great, so I think we should be just about there. Oh yes, we are there. So let's turn off the oven. Now look at that beauty. Now we're going to cut into the souffle. Let's make a nice clean cut. Hopefully we'll get a nice piece out of this. Sometimes what helps is to make 2 slices and only pull 1 out. Now look at that piece of souffle there. Unfortunately, some of it's kind of fallen flat, but it looks done, and it looks pretty great. It's sure piping hot. Not half bad. If you've enjoyed this video, hit the like button down there, and don't forget to subscribe. Whisk, whisk, whisk to my loo, whisk, whisk, whisk my loo, whisk, whisk, whisk. whisk to my loo, my darling. Cleaning up the dishes, cleaning up the dishes. We're cleaning up the dishes and making lots of noise. We're cleaning up the dishes, we're cleaning up the dishes. We're cleaning up the dishes and we're making